Welcome to the Healing Place podcast, a space filled with inspirational stories of hope, along with practical advice for your healing journey. Your host is Teri Wellbrock, trauma warrior, writer, speaker, blogger, therapy dog handler, and founder of the Sammy's Bundles of Hope project. As a survivor and a thriver, Teri's mission is to shine the light of hope into the world by interviewing insightful guests from across the globe. Please stay tuned at the end of today's interview as we honor our sponsors. The Healing Place podcast is a fiscally sponsored project of Fractured Atlas. Now, here's your host and trauma warrior, Teri Wellbrock.
Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I'm your host, Teri Wellbrock, and incredibly thrilled to have with me today Caroline Rose, a mom, a dog, cancer, hope. That's what we're going to dive into today. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we have Axel with us too.
Yes. I have a little pug. Well, actually, he should be littler. He's quite large, but he's in my lap right now taking a nap. So I'm going to try to keep him quiet.
That's all right. Everybody knows now that Axel's going to put some 2 cents in and join us. Let us know what
Not a pig, it's a dog.
Sammy's behind me on the floor. She might pop her head up to say hi at some point. So,
my. As long as we're surrounded by dogs, we are happy. We are happy people.
Yes, exactly. And oh my gosh, in a few minutes, we'll move into your beautiful dog, Riley, and I'll do a screen share and pop that up. So so let's talk first about who you are and what you do in the world.
Yeah. So I am 43 years old and live in Texas. We were in LA for about 16 years, moved back about 3 or 4 years ago to my hometown. And I am married. We've been married about 18 years now, I guess, and have a 13-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son. And they are, they're in this age where we always say, I just want to freeze it. I think I'm so aware of just the time passing and it's like when they were little, it's great, but it's a lot of work. It's just, you're exhausted at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And they're in this age where they're very independent. They can go fix a sandwich and do all this stuff. But yet they're just so much fun. And the problems are a little bigger, but it's just this, you see the type of people they're becoming. And I think that they've been through a lot. Ellie was 2 and my son was 5 weeks when I was re-diagnosed with my stage 4 cancer, lymphoma, for the 3rd time. I'd gone through it 2 times prior, and I really thought it was gone because we had done a potentially curative treatment about 3 years before Ellie was born. No, I'm sorry, 2 years before Ellie was born. It was a bone marrow transplant, and it was successful and the doctors were happy. And so I kind of, got through that and got back to life and thought, all right, let's go do this. And we didn't realize it, but during my son's pregnancy, my 2nd pregnancy, it had started to grow back. And we thought it was just normal pregnancy back pain, but it was actually the cancer had come and wrapped around my spine. And it was sort of pushing. And that was the back pain. So when he was born, about 5 weeks after, when your stomach starts to kind of, go down a little bit, that's when I really noticed the lumps that were the lymph nodes that were swollen. And by that point, I knew exactly what that was and did a CT scan that was confirmed. And so I think, that was tough, and that I really thought we were past it. And also I'd never gone through this as a mom. It had been just me and my husband. And it was scary and it was hard, but it was, it was not as emotionally terrifying. And once you have kids, it just became paralyzing, really. And I always say that 3rd diagnosis rocked my world. That was the trauma. That was what absolutely brought me to my knees. And ripped me apart to where I knew I had to regrow back from that. I had to heal from that. I had to repair myself from that while trying to be a mom, trying to be engaged with the kids, have energy to be a mom. You know, you never want to put that on your kids, but there are just times when you can't hide it from them. I mean, I was in the hospital for 2 months. I couldn't see them for 3 months. You know, I mean, it was just something that I had to surrender to. But I knew it would have an impact on them, you know, and I knew it would be something that they would wrestle with in different ways because Tommy was so young. You know, he was 5 weeks when I was diagnosed, 6 months old when I was in the hospital. And for a couple of years after, you know, I mean, even still today, they know, oh, mom doesn't feel well. She's in bed. Mom can't stay at my baseball game past 8 o'clock because if she doesn't go to bed by 8:30, she can't really function the next day. I mean, they just kind of know.
Right.
And I worried about that, you know, I worry. But then I look at them today and they're doing so well and they're highly empathetic. And I wrestle with that a little bit, you know, because this world isn't really made for empaths a lot of times. They're highly sensitive. But I think they are these wise souls that have been through a lot that hopefully, you know, have a bit of perspective that they don't even realize yet. And it's the silver lining maybe that came out of everything that they kind of rode through when they were so young.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, one, I talk often about trauma warrior. I hashtag trauma warrior a lot, and you are the poster child of trauma warrior. I mean, wow.
Yeah, none of us asked for that, did we? We never thought that would be it.
No,
We never did.
We don't want that badge, however.
No, we don't. But it's, you know, you learn how to wear it proudly.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's great is that your kids, I mean, well, one, resilience is just such a huge factor for overcoming trauma. And really, you've given your children the beautiful gift of resilience because, yeah, they've witnessed you in your triumph. So really,
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I was lucky when I was diagnosed. I had a mom friend, one of my daughter's friends' moms say, you know, you've got to go see this person, because I didn't know how to talk really to Ellie because Tommy was so young. I didn't know what to say. Do I tell her about what I'm going through? Do I not? I don't want to scare her. So she made me an appointment with this child psychologist. And I still to this day, I mean, I think about this doctor every day because I had one session with her, 1 hour. And the things that she told me were so monumental. Like they were so important and huge, and they stuck with me and they made sense and they resonated. I would have done anything she told me at that point. I was so just like, what do I do? But she said, never lie to them. You know, they will lose trust. And yes, they are so young, but don't, you know, give them more credit. They're going to sense something is off. They're going to know. So tell them, but tell them in an age appropriate way. You know, like mommy has a big germ bug in her body, not a little germ bug like a fever, you know. And she advised me to make a picture book on Shutterfly for Ellie, using the pictures I have in the past of the bald head and, you know, and write it, you know, mommy's book to Ellie, mommy, you know, the medicine is working and that's why mommy's head looks like this and all. So it kind of helped her. It told a story, you know, but then she also said, don't lie to them. You can never make false promises and say, I'm going to go to the hospital, but I'll be back tomorrow, or I will be, you know, just say, I'm going to go and I love you so much. I'm going to be here as soon as I can, that type of thing. And it really showed me just how to respect these kids more, because it's not, you know, I think any trauma survivor knows we have no control in this life. We can do the best we can and we can wake up every day. We have control over our attitude, our perspective, but we can't control what happens. So therefore, you know, you've got to equip these kids with a little bit of trust in life if you can, and just the power to empower themselves. And I don't know if I would have known that had I not been given that advice at that time. And I think that, you know, I hope that I still hold on to that with them every day, as, you know, even as they're getting older.
Yeah, I love that. And I've said it again, I've said it so often. And I mean, if we respect children, they are just so much wiser, I think, than we give them credit for as a society.
Mhm.
And yeah, by respecting them, I mean, again, that's just such a beautiful gift to give them, because
Mhm.
you're teaching them by example, and yeah,
Mhm.
and sharing your
Yeah.
truth. So yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful. Awesome. Well, one of the things I talked about before we hit record was I love your hits of hope, which is on your website, and it's
Yeah.
10 tips to guide you when you want to offer love and support in a meaningful way. So I know
Mhm.
one thing, when people, when I find out a friend is ill, or I find
Yeah.
out something is going on in someone's life, it is that difficult. Like, what do I do? How do I help? How
Sure.
do I support? And so,
Mhm.
yeah, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. It's funny because I think I still struggle with that. If I hear a friend is going through something, I still have that little bit of anxious feeling, what do I do? What's the best thing to do? And I think it's so normal for everyone to feel that way. And I think that, it kind of started as more of an exercise for me to write down so I wouldn't forget, what was really helpful and meaningful, and the reverse, maybe what not to say or do that could add more stress or pressure or whatever it might be. Even though the intention is, pure gold, it can come off maybe the wrong way, which is what creates the anxiety around what to do for somebody. And so I think it started with me writing it down for myself, but then realizing a lot of people would ask me, hey, what should I do for my mom? What should I do for my friend? And I think that I was so young when I was diagnosed. I was 27,
Wow.
and it was such a shock. I remember when I called my friends to tell them, and I remember this so well. I remember a couple of their reactions. Most of them were just that, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, or, and I was right there with them. We were just in shock. I remember one friend I called, and she just said, that sucks. I was like, it really does. And it just felt so free. It was like, and I tell this friend still all the time how helpful that was for me. I think a lot of times we want to be strong and we want to be okay, like, yes, I have this, but I'm okay. And that might be true, but I think sometimes just to have people see you without you having to show them, meaning they're just going to show up. They're not going to call and say, hey, can I come over and bring, dinner 2 nights from now? I'm going to say, you are so nice to offer, but I think we're good, because I feel guilt over them having to make dinner and bring it. And then it's kind of scheduled and it's,
Right.
but if you show up 2 nights from now with dinner and just you're there and it's, here you go, put it in the freezer if you need, but here you go. That to me that is hugely helpful. It's just I think it's just trying to give support without adding to people's plates, and I think just letting your person be real, it is what it is. And it may suck right now, but, actually, no, I think it just sucks right now, because
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of Emily McDowell, the greeting cards. They are the funniest things. If you haven't, you've got to go look. I think she has one card that says something like, please let me be the next person to punch whoever tells you that everything happens for a reason, because it's
Right.
like the last thing you want to hear. That, but you don't want to hear it. You want to have your time to sort of
Yeah.
want to be a little mad and scared and sad. And when you're ready to move through that, you'll be ready to move through it. So I think I understand it's difficult for everyone on every side, whether you want to support, whether you're going through it, whether you're the caretaker. It's a very difficult situation. And so I think my hope was to make it a little easier, and just having been through it and see my husband and my parents and my kids, what was really, if you're looking for guidance, maybe what worked for us.
Beautiful. I had
Yeah.
just seen something on Facebook about that was kind of along the same line. Somebody had put out, when they were sick. I think maybe it was in the hospital with COVID, really bad symptoms, and it was somebody had responded, everything's going to be okay. God's got this. And now
Uh-huh.
I'm a person of faith, and I believe in
Right.
the power of prayer. And yes,
Mhm.
I know that, but they were struggling with the
Mhm.
fear, and so it almost made it worse for this
Right.
person, because they thought, oh my gosh, like God's going to be mad because I'm doubting, because I'm allowing
Right.
this fear to overwhelm me. And so it really became this great conversation about
Yeah.
that's, I mean, the intention is so good to say it,
Yes.
but it's just, it hurts. I mean, it can cause harm.
I know exactly what you're saying. There was a time, and I can't remember when in my health stuff, but someone said to me, God won't give you more than you can handle. And again, I believe in God. I am a big pray. I mean, I am connected. But I remember when they said that to me, I think I looked up and I said, why do you think I'm this strong? I don't want to be strong. Quit giving me stuff. Like it was
Right.
almost this like, so you're saying God gave this to me because I'm strong. Okay, fine. I'm not strong. I'm not. I'm out. No, And it was
Right.
just
Right.
like, again, it's not helpful. It was and I guess another thing I just thought of, I had a friend again, because we were a couple years out of college when I was diagnosed, and we were in this young, invincible, these are the time of our life years. And I called, she was a very close friend, and I called to tell her. And it was a pretty short conversation. Then I never heard from her. I never heard from her probably for 10 years. And I was hurt. I was angry. I was really angry. And it took me 10 years to really realize that it was maybe more hurtful for her, and she was so uh, scared, and she didn't know how to handle it, and she didn't know what to say. And I saw her last year, I guess, before COVID, and it was a girls' college reunion. And I heard from someone else that she was terrified to see me, and it just hit me. And it was like, gosh, I hate that. I hate that for her. And I really understood why she wasn't there. And it wasn't because she didn't care. And it wasn't because she just, she couldn't be.
Right.
And I am sad that I faulted her for that. And I think it's important, because I, learned it the hard way, that it's not, it's really hard on your family and friends when you go through something, and they go through it too, and they go through it in their own way. But I think that I wish I hadn't assumed that it was for something that it wasn't,
Yes. Well, that's such a trauma informed. I mean, you're looking at it through a trauma informed lens and looking at it from her perspective, and the
Yeah.
trauma. Yes, it's your trauma, but the impact that it's having on her, which is just such a beautiful way to. I told my son the other day, we were talking on the phone, and John and I love to dive deep. That's the one in Denver that I was talking about, my shirt.
Yeah.
And so John and I, who's 27. So when you say 27, is when you're first diagnosed. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, my son is 27,
Right.
but he and I were diving deep on something and having a great mom-son conversation. And I told him, I said, one of the things I've learned along the way through all of this healing journey is to take a step back and try to remind myself everyone's on their own journey. And just because someone might not be as far along down the path that I am. So your friend could have went way back here on her own journey. And you're right, just didn't have the skills necessary to deal with it. So, yeah.
That's so interesting that you say that. She actually, I think she did have something that sort of, I think helped shift her perspective, and it's those silver linings when we go through this stuff.
Yeah.
What you see and learn and realize. And it really is, I think it's why you hear a lot of people say with certain things, like, I don't know if I could go back, I may not change it, because what I gained, if you
Yes.
really allow yourself to do it, it's pretty special. And like you just said, it creates that human connection that's so authentic, because you've come out of something. I always say we always relate in the depths of the struggle. It's that dark, scary place. But for me, at least, that's where I really, maybe for the first time, found that really strong human connection. And it was with people that weren't afraid to talk about the ugliness, and the messiness. And life isn't this picture perfect Disney fairy tale that we sometimes grew up to think it was. And so it was a little like, oh my gosh, am I something wrong with me? But we all have it. We all have something, and to different degrees and totally different circumstances. But I think when we're able to talk about it, be open about it, and it's been incredible to see what's come of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you took the words out of my mouth. I have found soul connection with so many people by sharing my truth. And it's just, how many people have then come to me and said, oh my gosh, me too. Like that they've never told anyone about before. And I feel so honored to be that person, because I had the courage to put my truth out there. And so, it is very powerful. And I know one of the things that we wanted to talk about that really was a catalyst for you and your healing journey is Riley.
Yes.
So I'm going to pop up a picture here on the share screen for anyone watching the video. We're going to go right there. So do you want to talk about Riley?
Handsome boy. Riley, I've always loved animals. They've always sort of been a little bit of a healing place for me. And I had just finished my first 8 rounds of chemo. I'd gone into remission. My husband and I got married, moved to our first little rental cottage in Santa Monica. And I was in this place in my life where the doctors had said from the very beginning, we can treat you, but we cannot cure you. If this cancer will come back. And we knew when it came back, I would do a bone marrow transplant, which was the potentially curative option. So I was waiting. I was in this weird state of, I can't go back to work. I was in medical school when I was diagnosed. Can't go back to school. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm literally waiting for this cancer to come back. And it was a really hard way for me to live. At the time, I was very type A and goal oriented, and I just needed, and our landlord had said in bold type, no dogs allowed on the lease. And he was from New Jersey. He scared me to death. And we still keep in touch. He's fabulous. But he'd been attacked by a dog when he was younger, and he was on his properties often, and he did not want to mess with the dog. So I knew this. And one day I'm sitting there, and I just Googled rescue dogs, Los Angeles, scrolled through, saw Riley's picture. He was being put down that day. He'd been horrifically abused. He had burn marks all over his body. He was a Great Dane lab mix. So he was emaciated at 111 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
And he couldn't walk because they'd kept him in a small cage, the cage that he had as a puppy, and they never let him out or change the cage. So he'd been cramped up in this cage. So I called my husband and told him, and he thought I was crazy, but knew me well enough to know that if this was going to happen, this was going to happen. And it happened. I went and got Riley and brought him home. And I think it was 2 weeks. He literally stayed in the corner of our house, and he'd go out to go to the bathroom and go right back to the corner. He was terrified, absolutely terrified. And I thought, what have I done? What in the world have I done? And then one night I was cooking steaks, and he kind of crept up in the kitchen, and I gave him a piece of steak, gave him a piece of my husband's steak, and he loved it. And I kind of saw just him relax. And then I swear I gave him the whole steak. I was like, oh, here you go, take it all. And that was it. And he became my project. And so the one thing I knew he loved was the tennis ball. And he'd sleep with it, it was his security blanket. So I went to the beach early and started tossing it in the waves. And he started building up his muscle. And then we'd go to the dog park, and then we started hiking. And he never needed reconstructive surgery. We just, rehabbed him and healed him. And he was with me through my second diagnosis, through my third diagnosis, through my pregnancies, my kids. He was the constant, and for me, what I realized once I got through all the treatments and once I kind of was in the phase of life where I call it in like recovery, like this, it's this weird new life on the other side of cancer. I don't know who I am. And it was an odd thing. And I still was struggling with side effects and infections in the hospital and whatnot. But I knew I wanted to be a good mom, and I knew I wanted to be a good wife and daughter and all friend and all that, because I put them all through so much. So I gave so much energy to others that when I was kind of by myself, I needed a creature, a being to just give back to me. And that's what Riley was for me. And he became this quiet source of strength and unconditional love. And he'd get in bed with me for hours, and he never needed anything from me other than just love. And I mean, he never left my side. He became actually a service dog. He was so smart. He had this magical effect on others, not just me. And it was like showing off, proud mom, her son. But there was, I think the first example I really remember was at my daughter's preschool. He would always ride in the car, and I had this car where I could pop the back window open, and he was kind of just put his head out, and I'd drive around town like that, And so we'd park, and we were in California, so the weather wasn't too hot. He'd stay in the car. And this little girl was nervous to go into preschool. And we knew it was small. We knew most of the parents. She's like, why don't you go pet Riley? And she went over and crawled in the back of the car, and she started rubbing Riley's head. And she said she did it for courage. And then other kids started doing it. And it became a thing where we'd park, and before school every day, the kids would line up and go rub Riley's head for courage. And it was just what he did. And he went to Disneyland he really went everywhere with us. And we were in line at Disneyland one morning, and there was a mom and a little boy behind us that I really wasn't paying much attention to. And Riley's kind of on the ground, and I'm looking the other way, and I hear like a choked sob of some sort. So I kind of turn around, and the mom is sort of looking down, and her son had his hand on Riley's back. And it wasn't that it wasn't, I wasn't understanding what was happening. And she then kind of, she composed herself and said, my son is terrified of animals. Has autism. He's pretty far on the spectrum. And it's such a problem that we've had him in pretty intense therapy over this. And I think it's connected to other issues. And it was really a thing for her. And she's explaining this, and that she was nervous seeing us in line at her son's reaction, but he was very calm behind us. And then he went over and put his hand on Riley.
Oh my God.
And as she's telling me this, we're talking, and then we kind of looked over, and her son has his body completely across the top of Riley, and he's just laying on top of him.
I have goosebumps.
It was this thing where she just said, you have the most special dog. And I was like, yeah, I know. It's just this, I think there are certain dogs that they're angels, they come to heal. And
Yes.
You know it when you have one, and you know it when you see it, and others sense it. And, we had other friends who were scared of dogs, and they've since rescued animals and are absolutely in love with their dogs, and Riley, they all credit Riley, to showing them what the love of a dog can do and be. And it's different for all of us, it's what we need it to be. And they are A-okay with that. They just, they heal the cracks in your heart, because humans are imperfect. We all try very hard, but we hurt each other. We just do. And the love of a dog is the one thing that will never hurt you. And it is so safe, and you can trust it fully, and you're never kind of tiptoeing around, And I think it's really important for all of us to have it, because it helps us trust life and love more than we could if we hadn't learned it from them.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I cried, I laughed, I got
Yeah.
goosebumps, like, oh my
Oh,
gosh. And
yeah.
I relate because we talked about Sammy beforehand, and
Mhm.
there is just this special angelic gift about, certain animals, certain dogs, or at least in my experience. And sometimes
Yeah.
I joke with Sammy, I'll look at her because I swear she's reading my thoughts. And people will tell me, this dog looks into my soul. Like, I've
Yeah.
had more than one person say that to me, because she just has this way. It's like she's looking through the exterior, stuff we put on, and looks right in and sees the authentic and the real. And I
And
sometimes
still
joke to
loves
her,
you so much for it.
oh my
Loves you
gosh,
so much for whatever she sees.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the beautiful part of it, is she
Yeah.
they just accept you for who you are, and
Yeah.
in everything. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
1,000%.
I know.
1,000%.
Well, I
Yes.
tell her, I say, are you going to go back and report to the mothership while I'm sleeping? Because I think he's an alien sometimes. I'm like, holy cow, dog. You're like so intelligent. You're
That is
so,
amazing.
yeah,
That is
it's like I can
so
hear her
funny.
thoughts. She's just the sweetest.
Oh,
Just,
yeah.
you
I
guys.
know. I know. I'm just nodding because you're saying everything that I say as well. It's, and then I remember too with the kids, I remember when I had to say goodbye and go to the hospital for quite a while. I remember I was saying goodbye to my daughter because again, Tommy was so little. And she was I remember she said something like, but who's going to have tea parties with me while you're gone? And her 2-year-old brain, 2.5-year-old brain at this time, what she was trying to figure out. And then it was this, I remember I said something like, well, Dad, and she said, oh, Riley can have them, and that just made her so happy. And they'd send me pictures. She'd paint Riley's toenails, it took her hours. And this dog sat there with just painted, it was for her. They had this thing where it was, if I'm sad, I'm just going to go hug Riley.
Yeah.
And they did. I've got a million pictures of my kids just wrapped around this dog. And they were so little that it for them gave them what they needed in that moment, and I will be forever grateful for that. Forever grateful.
Yeah. What a gift. Wow.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to touch upon before we close out for today?
I feel like what I've learned more than anything, and it took me, I think, years after my third diagnosis to really begin to process. I didn't realize it was a trauma until I was further out. It was just too much for me to process. And once I started processing, what I realized was, and I also think I did some public speaking and started going around the country. And I loved hearing afterwards, talking to audience members. And there was one message that I realized was very consistent. And one man said it best after his talk in Georgia. He came up and he said, listen, my nephew was just diagnosed for the second time with a leukemia, and he has to have his second bone marrow transplant.
Wow.
And we have just been distraught. Like, we really have just been. And he was this very distinguished, was kind of intimidated by him, this older gentleman. And he just had tears. And he said, I just listened to you and your story. And even though it's a different story, you also had 2 bone marrow transplants, and you just gave me hope. And he showed me a picture of his nephew and said, I'm getting ready to call them, and I'm going to then give them hope. And I think that was the common thread that I kept hearing. And I thought, listen, I don't know why I'm still alive. I'm not statistically supposed to still be here. I thought I was going to be a surgeon. I'm left brain. I love a good math problem. But here I am, writing and speaking and talking about this message of hope because I lived it. And it was what I had to choose. And I chose it. And I've seen what it has done for people. And I've seen situations not work out or end the way people had hoped they would. But it doesn't mean that that hope isn't there. It just changes its form a little bit. So I've been asked, well, I personally had my uncle passed away last year, and it was sort of this, well, we were hopeful. It didn't, and it's like, yes, but hope doesn't mean it's going to look like exactly what we want it to look like. Hope means so many things, but it shifted the form of it, and then you start to realize that. And there's been so much, and there have been incredible things that have come out of my uncle's passing situation with my cousins. And now they look back and they're like, oh yeah, now I get it, but it's not a guarantee. It's just what you hold on to and what keeps you going when you need it to. Yeah. And I think that it's essential. I don't think that it's nice or pretty to have. I think you have to have it. And, I've seen it. Like, I've seen it. So I've lived it. I've seen it. I've heard it. I've listened to it. I've watched it. And it's everything.
Yes. And I agree. I had a great interview with Casey Gwynn, and he talks about the science of hope. And it really is a science too. I mean, besides the fact, feeling it on a heart and soul level, it really is critical for the healing journey. Yes.
I think it is. It is.
Well, 1,000%. For life, not just the healing journey, but for life.
Right. For life. Yeah. Yes. And to trust it, don't be afraid to trust it.
Right. Mm-hmm. So how do people find you? How do they connect and get a hold of you?
Yes, my website, Dear Riley Rose. And then it's the same for Instagram, Facebook, my email's on there. I love talking to people anytime. Would love that.
Awesome. Wonderful. Yeah. Well, my heart is hugging yours. And yes, thank you for joining me. I'm so glad we connected.
Thank you. I am too. I've loved it. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us today on the Healing Place podcast. And until next time, remember, be gentle with yourself. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening today to the Healing Place podcast with your host and trauma warrior, Teri Wellbrock. If you enjoyed this episode and want to learn more about Teri, her mission, and the Hope for Healing journey, visit Teri's website at www.teriwellbrock.com. Thank you for liking, commenting, sharing, and offering your reviews on our YouTube channel, audio outlets, and Facebook page. And as Teri reminds us, until next time, remember, be gentle with yourself.